Hello. Hey, Ron.
Hey Louie, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. We're we're getting slightly nicer weather where I am these days, and that helps everything. It's
Same
warming
here.
up.
Same here. Yep. That's like you're in London, right? So that's like how many nice days do you even have a year in London?
It's better not to count, I think. Just
Yeah.
enjoy them when they come.
Not to make you jealous, but I would consider about half the days in Israel to be nice weather. Half the days of the year. It's like
It's not
sunny,
a
not too
competition.
hot. Yeah. And it's like and the other ones are they tend on the too hot side, right? Like so
Yeah.
there's like it's so we maybe have a month where it's too cold,
So a bad day is just
too
normally
hot.
too hot.
Yeah.
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 Um. Yeah. How are you?
Good. So yesterday we had a fun webinar.
Mm.
We had. I really judge like there's chat. We have live chats in our webinars, and
Hmm.
you know it's weird. Like the difference between a good webinar and a great webinar is how many excited thank yous you get in the chat at the end of the webinar, because that
That's a nice metric.
it is a nice metric. It's a formula of how many people stuck it to the end, what percentage of them were excited enough to say thank you and this was great and stuff like that. And so some events like you get one at the end, and I think last night we got like 20.
More than one.
Yeah, we got like 20 like thanks, that was great. And I think there were like 50 who persisted all the way to the end, which is a pretty nice number.
Cool.
um,
What were you talking about?
uh,
What was the
we're
webinar
talking
on?
about design sprints and why they're a secret weapon for product decisions, which is one of my favorite takes on the design sprint. But we um, we do a simulation of the sprint process as part of the webinar. So we
It's
create a
like a
fictional
sprint of a
problem.
sprint.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of a simulation of a sprint, and people participate via chat.
Mm.
So when you have a lot of people, it's really fun because it's engaging. Um, and by the way, a little trick: if you run a workshop, an online workshop,
Go on.
it takes a lot of courage to do
Hmm.
because it's scary. But when I give an exercise, I just start playing music and like sit back and wait for people to participate. And if they don't, I'm gonna wait like 2 minutes. I'm like, I don't care. Like
I'm not giving up.
I'm not gonna move forward until they. So everybody's like, there's this calculation. I don't want to be the first one to speak. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
be this
yeah.
that. But
But
I'm
I
like,
also
oh,
don't want to. I want to
just
break
stare at the
this.
run,
Yeah.
sitting there, we're listening to music.
Yeah.
Um, and so usually that helps. And after about a minute, people break, and it's like starts to be
But
like
you're
this.
right. It does take some confidence to sit that out and know that everyone's watching you.
Everybody's watching me doing nothing, drinking coffee while music is playing.
What's the
Um,
best? What music do you play? What's the atmosphere you're creating there?
so that is actually a sensitive
Yeah, I
topic
can
for
imagine
us
that's a
because
difficult decision.
so we do a lot of these sprint workshops, and for years, no matter what I played, someone complained. So if I went too calm, like I went too like, because I was like, okay, let's put the like music for focus. So I find some like
Yeah.
nice playlist for focus, and then
Too
after a
sleepy,
while,
I guess,
it's
is the
like
complaint.
yeah. So
Yeah.
some people say it's putting me to sleep. Some people say it's like elevator music, like it's boring. Some people say, so I'm like, okay, let's kick it up a notch. So I started playing like I have a playlist that has some Adele songs, and then people started complaining that they've heard enough Adele already. And then we had like I put some like bluegrass music, which I really love bluegrass, and it was too distracting. And so eventually I found this one playlist
Okay.
that is, how can I describe it? So it's called, I think it's called Indie Folk for Focus or something like that.
Okay.
This is the title of the playlist.
Yeah.
But
You should
it's
post this
like,
afterwards, I think.
yeah, maybe.
You should
But
share it.
so this playlist, this one playlist, if okay, so there's a spectrum between really calm and focus, um, you know, inducing, and then there's on the other side, kind of rock and roll, kind of energetic,
Energy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but a little bit distracting, right? A little bit.
Mm.
So I would put it on. So if there was a line between, okay, this is helping my focus and this is distracting me, it is one step over the line
Okay.
across
Just to make
rock and
people.
roll.
Okay.
So it's, so I think what it does is it like it creates the sense of like just a little bit of effort to focus, which I'm guessing is what people actually need to stay focused, is just putting a little bit. I just need to
Or it's like
ignore the
distraction
drums.
from all the other things
Yeah,
that they
maybe.
could be thinking about. So it's like I can only focus on the music and the
Right.
task.
And I think my theory is that people are really sleep deprived, and so if it's not a little bit distracting, that they actually go into
Embrace the
sleepiness.
sleep. Yeah.
Now I'm not sleep deprived. That's one of the things that I'm very very careful about, that I do get enough sleep,
Mm.
and so for me that's a little bit too distracting. But I found that something that's a little bit too distracting for me is perfect for everyone else.
Mm.
Um, and also like
And what
there's
about
like,
lyrics? Are lyrics allowed?
yeah, exactly. So I thought lyrics would be terrible.
Yeah, I would
And
guess that as well.
so this is a playlist where it has lyrics, but the lyrics are just enough, um, not the point of the song, or they're
Mm.
just enough not clear. They're kind
They're
of
just.
grungy or kind of
I'm
rock
not
and
sure
roll.
how some of these artists would feel about.
Well, yeah, whatever, right? But like I
I
feel
know.
like I feel like there's just enough there that it keeps people interested but not distracted. Anyway, that's the one playlist, and I hate it. That's not my favorite playlist, but that's the one playlist I've never had any complaint about ever.
Okay.
Like nobody ever mentions it. It disappears into the background, and it's like not making them sleepy. So I don't know.
It's doing its job, I think.
I guess so, but like in person, I'm still gonna create maybe more relaxing music. But when we do remote sprints, I guess without that edge, people kind of lose their focus.
Yeah, you're not there to wake them up.
Exactly, exactly.
What's your thesis then on general sleep deprivation and your own? Do you have like rules for sleep? I feel like everyone has a different number of hours that they say they need
So
or humans need.
yeah, first of all, there's science around that. So I don't. If you have your own theory, nah, wrong.
Question it.
Go talk to some scientists. So that's what I tried to do. So I listened to, so there's this masterclass course on sleep by this guy Matthew Walker, who's one of the biggest, most prominent sleep scientists. And he also did a wonderful podcast with Sam Harris on sleep. And I think both of these things are so you know. And I also read this book about sleep years ago, but
Yeah.
summarize the research for me. What does science say? And so, as a rule of thumb, you can say that we accumulate the need to sleep at about an hour per 2 hours of wakefulness.
Okay.
That's a general rule. So it's not as simple as you need 8 hours of sleep a night, though it does come down to that, right?
Mm.
But if you are awake for 16 hours, you need 8 hours of sleep, right? But if you are awake for 18 hours,
Yeah.
now you need 9 hours of sleep. So
Okay.
so right that night. So it's a relationship of hours of wakefulness to hours of sleep, because
Okay.
hours of
So you're,
wakefulness accumulate whatever is this thing that they accumulate with, and there's different things that get accumulated during wakefulness that um, need to be cleaned or stored, if it's memories or it's so. But that's the rule of thumb. Um, I but the more interesting thing to remember about sleep is that this is the thing that still a lot of people don't know. This is the number one thing that's really important for people to know is
mm,
sleep debt.
okay.
So when you miss an hour of sleep, it's not like fine the next night because you had a normal night of sleep. You still have a debt and it keeps
Mm.
accumulating. And I don't think there's like a clear scientific consensus on how much it
What
accumulates.
the interest rate is on that?
Well, I, yeah, I don't even know if there's interest rates, but just pure accumulation, I think people have demonstrated up to 20 or 30 hours can accumulate
Mm.
on top of each other. And that's like a residual debt that is actually affecting your performance every day. Um, where, so one thing I know about myself is once I've accumulated enough debt, um, I start misspelling words.
This is your
This is
this
my
is your
measurement.
pointer. This is when you
Because
know
I
it's
used to
got.
be a journalist and an editor, and I don't make
Yeah.
spelling basic spelling mistakes, right? And I spot them right away in others, right? So when I send an email and then an hour later read it, I'm like, oh my god, like three spelling errors.
You know it's time to
I
sleep.
take a vacation. Like I
Yeah.
immediately book a vacation. Uh, but
That's
for
good
every,
self-awareness, I think, to to have
I mean,
a
I've seen it enough
useful.
times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's funny.
I've seen it enough times that I know that that's the issue. But but I think for it also, I think the first thing to go well before function is happiness. Like just your ability, like
Just feel miserable.
operating every day in daily life should be a joy. Like nothing should feel so overwhelming. You shouldn't want to run and be in your in your house in your bed all the time, unless, I mean, of course, if you have like depression or something like that. But
Mm.
if that happens, my first go-to is like, what's going on is lack of sleep.
Mm.
And only after I've paid back a lot of debt, if I still feel that way, maybe there's something deeper. um,
Yeah, everything feels harder without enough sleep, for sure.
yeah. And then there's the one final thing. I can talk about this for hours, because I can talk about anything for hours. But but
That's why
but
I'm
this
here.
yeah but this so this study that kind of started this whole idea of sleep debt is
Mm.
really, really fascinating. What they did was, they were, I think they were studying the seasonal effects on sleep, like the effects
Mm.
of winter on sleep and something like that. And so they took people um, to this quiet hotel room, and complete darkness, and they had to report like at 4 p.m. and get
Okay.
into bed, ready to sleep. And they measured how well they slept, and what turned out to be the case is most people had no problem falling asleep at 4 p.m. and
Mm.
staying asleep the whole night. And they kept doing this, every night, until every one of them repaid about 20 or 30 hours of debt. And then they could no longer fall asleep until like midnight.
Yeah.
So this is the ultimate test for me, is like, if I
If
go
you go to
into a
bed at
dark
4
room,
and you
yeah,
can sleep, you need
yeah,
it. Yeah.
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 If you go into a dark bedroom with a comfy bed and you fall asleep, then you probably have some debt. And so I actually did this experiment. I for about a month a few years ago, went to bed not at 4, but every day at 9 p.m.
Mm.
And it took me about a month to not be able to do that. So after
Mm.
about a month, I would go to bed at 9 p.m. and couldn't fall asleep until like 11 or 12.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It does feel like it's kind of, it sounds like trusting your body kind of as well.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
if you need it, you'll you'll take
It
it,
will
kind
happen.
of.
It will
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
What about napping? How does napping fit in?
So there's all of these napping regimes out there. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
heard of but like the Iron Man or like these different
yeah.
napping regimes. Or I've
Well,
never.
there's like the coffee one. I've
Yeah,
heard
yeah,
an espresso 20
yeah.
minute nap.
I'm a
I don't
horrible
know.
napper. I'm a horrible napper. I don't think I've ever successfully napped. I have a ton of energy. I have to force myself to go to bed at night,
Mm,
and then I fall asleep. But I've never been able to, like, if I tell my brain like, okay, you have an hour to nap now, my brain will be like, let's do something
no.
else. Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Well, I mean, the kind of it's pretty relevant to this week's podcast, I think,
mm,
with John Zeratsky about
yeah.
exactly the sort of, I guess you could call it time management. His new book. Maybe you can tell us a little about this week's episode, John
Yeah.
Zeratsky.
Yeah. So John Zeratsky is so many things that
Yeah,
it's really hard to encapsulate him. But he is among many other things. And then I'll introduce maybe the whole book.
yeah,
But among other things, he wrote this book, Make Time with Jake Knapp, who's also a former guest of the podcast. So they're both the creators of the design sprint at Google Ventures, and then they wrote shortly after, and which was a surprise to me. They actually wrote this very shortly after the sprint book.
and I
But
think it was a surprise to them by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it took a while to publish, and but um, but I think this is just book full. It's kind of a life hacking book, um, with time at the center, right? But it's everything about time, um, that we take for granted and maybe we shouldn't have. So a lot of us, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but a lot of us who work for like corporate America or startups and stuff, we're used
Mm,
to our calendars being open for every other employee to just grab a slice and take a meeting out of it,
okay.
no matter what we were planning to do that day, unless
Mm,
it's blocked, right? So just even the act of like, hey, that's not okay. That's yes, that is the default behavior in many tech companies, but you really need the ability to focus to be productive, and maybe you should block like focus time on your
mm,
calendar and not let people just further that away. But it has all these other great ideas. Like my favorite tip in this book is the daily highlight,
mm,
which is this idea that we can realistically accomplish one big thing every day, and that in order to kind of be productive every day, we need to know what that thing is every day, and then just very jealously protect it. And it doesn't have to be a work related thing. It could be like, today I'm having fun with friends, we're having a picnic, right? Or it could be, today I'm finally going to make a dent in this book.
mm,
Whatever it is, early in the day, you decide what the highlight is going to be. You allocate a block of uninterrupted 2-3 hours for it, at least,
mm,
and you just jealously guard it. You arrange everything around that block so that you absolutely do accomplish that one thing that day.
mm.
And that's such a powerful thing because, especially today, like, our attention gets frittered away by so many different services and tasks and interruptions. So just saying, nope, for 3 hours, I'm not available. You can't get to me. I'm not going to schedule anything else. I don't know. I'm going to redesign our landing page, or I'm going
Mm,
to write the next blog post, or
mm.
it's so important. And then if you just look back at a year, oh my God, I have had 300 days in which I've actually every day accomplished something significant.
Mm.
And that's kind of the power of it.
Yeah, and they're quite clear that it's not about necessarily being more productive, right, or getting more things done, but actually kind of eliminating a lot of the distracting stuff. And I think the subtitle of the book is like focusing on what matters. So I think it's an interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it,
What matters to you? So I guess it
yeah,
depends on how you define productive.
yeah.
Because that is one definition of productive is is doing achieving what matters to you. Um,
But it's, I guess that's not what we've come to think of it of, or in general,
yeah,
in sort of a lot of working cultures, productivity is kind of tied to how much we achieve, often
yeah,
for
yeah,
others as well, right?
for sure. No, for sure. So um, I think productivity definitely comes from like a work culture. But if you actually look at productivity gurus out there, like David Allen, which we spoke to also on the podcast,
Mm,
or Jake and John, um, that they're trying to help the individual be more effective. Um, they don't. Almost nobody that I know who teaches productivity means just work. They all mean
yeah,
whatever priorities and values you are trying to actuate in this world, right? And so, um, it's still productivity, but it's I think I love how explicit they are in this book, which is one of the possibilities for a highlight is like catch up with a good friend, right?
yeah.
That day, and I'm going to protect that because that's what matters. And so yeah, I love that, and they're both kind of people who um, kind of take the slow lifestyle very seriously, protect their time very jealously.
Mm,
Um, uh, John talked about how he went on a sailing trip around the world with his family, kind of disconnecting from everything. Um, Jake, I believe Jake, last I heard from him, just recently moved to an island
okay.
off the coast of Seattle. I think I'm not even sure, but like yeah. So they're very kind of that's their mindset. Um,
I was listening to it and thinking about. Also, last week we had another live chat about systems thinking, partially,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And I'm kind of, I was curious how you think these things tie together, because in one way I think, like you said, this is about the individual making time for things that matter, and kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know how you redesigning time to be more productive, but that in some ways that does feel a little bit like an uphill struggle
Mm.
sometimes against systemic factors that kind of, yeah, I mean, for example, time is money, right? It's not necessarily beneficial for everyone for
Yeah.
us to have lots of time to do what matters to us in some ways.
Yeah.
And do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I was thinking about if in that sense it can sometimes feel like an uphill struggle with against some systemic factors.
right, but you also are in control of some of the many of the factors in the system. Um, so it's an uphill struggle because we live in a capitalistic society that puts a value on our time,
Yeah,
and
precisely.
in most cases um, does not put enough value on our time
Yeah,
to allow us to make enough and still have time for ourselves. I mean, it's not.
yeah, and there's some interesting things about how 100 years ago, I think they predicted that our leisure time would increase
Yeah,
as we,
no,
and that's gone down.
yeah. Well, so it did go up fantastically
Mm,
over many generations. The free time, and we're not spending hours and hours washing clothes, right? And we're not spending
yeah,
hours and hours. However, we did invent new kinds of work to occupy our time.
mm.
Like, what is a social media manager? Like, what is that? But, but I'm joking, of course, because we're actually looking for a social media manager. But so I realize what it is. But
And will you value that time?
yeah, but so I think that what what happens is, um,
Sorry, I gave lots of different things there, so feel free to pick one of them and respond to any.
I'll continue with like stream of consciousness
Okay.
bullshit. But no, but I think it's like, so first of all, everything is a system. Everything that's made of elements that have relationships and affect one another is a system by definition, right? So your life is a system, just like your body is a system. Your life is a
Mm,
system, and and the society you are a part of is a system. If you're a part of a company, if you're a part of a school in your case, if you're a part of, so whatever it is, it's a system. And systems, um, they resist change. First of all,
yeah.
like they have created some sort of balance, and they are not, you know, they tend to defend themselves. So if you went to your boss and said, I don't want to be, uh, well, your boss is a pretty nice guy, so I don't know about that, but but
Oh,
if you I'm just saying,
yeah.
but if you go to, if someone goes to their boss and says, um, I don't want to be paid hourly.
Yeah.
How about you pay me just based on accomplishments and the value that I bring to you, and if I can do it in, 5 hours a week, that's what I'll get paid the same, and I'll go and spend more time on the beach, right?
Hmm.
Um, there'll be resistance, right? There'll be some resistance. And this part of the move that we did when we started selling design sprints is we said, hey, these design sprints, we're going to solve some of your biggest problems. We're going to really bring clarity to your product.
Mm,
Yeah, it's going to take us 5 days, but we're going to charge you based on the value, not based on the time that we spent.
hmm.
And yeah, a lot of people say no because they are part of the system and part of the way of thinking that you get paid for time, right? So
Hmm.
if so, anybody who comes to me was like, okay, how many people, how many hours is that? I don't even answer that question. I know that
Right.
they are captured by a wrong way of thinking, um, and so the so that's
And do you find
I'm kind of
yourself
rambling, but
converting
yeah, yeah,
people? Do you find yourself
yeah.
having
I mean,
discussions with clients and kind of
yeah.
do
Look,
people
it
kind of
ends up
see
being
your perspective on it?
it ends up being a conversation, like a kind of a personal conversation about,
Mm,
okay, I think you're the right person to help me solve this problem, because I can see the way you think, and I can see that your proposals, and I can see that you understand me, and now you're telling me that this is the way you work, so I have to decide between working this way, which is not my preference, you
mm,
know, or working with someone else. Um, and so at this point, some people say, well, I like you enough and I believe in you enough that I will work in the way that you tell me to.
mm.
And by the way, I do believe that it's the best way for them. It's not just, it's not just
Yeah.
better for us, it's also better for them. But um, but it's definitely not the first thought that they have. Like, obviously the first instinct is, can I hire you for a few hours and pay you for, a few pittance for those hours? And it's, you
Mm,
know, uh, we've seen enough like $1 million raises after like a design project with us, or for people who just came in with an idea, that I know the value of our work. So I'm not gonna work that way because it doesn't make sense
mm.
for us. Um, but um, but yeah, I want to get back to John Zeratsky because I feel like we kind of
Yeah.
introduced him as
We the way we can get back to it is that we're talking about um, daily highlights and making time
yeah,
to make them happen.
yeah.
What was your what's yours today? Do you have one?
Um, yes, I do. My
Can you
highlight for
share it?
today, sure, yeah. My highlight for today is I have an interview. I'm interviewing a very famous designer called Dan Formosa,
Great.
for our podcast, and so a lot of this morning was spent on finalizing the questions that I'm going to ask him. Uh, you know, doing final bits of research. I've been preparing for a few days now,
Mm,
um, and that's the thing that I first of all, it's on my calendar, so it's protected, but it's also the thing where I will not be available. There won't be notifications, and it's the one thing that I have to accomplish today. Is that interview at the highest possible level, and then everything
Yeah.
else. I have some sales emails that I need to do and stuff like that, but it's gonna be surround that really protected space. And
And
if
when can we hear the interview?
oh,
A
this will be
few
in a few
weeks.
weeks. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you know better than I how many podcasts you've edited after John Zeratsky, right? So, all of those are
Can't.
before this. Yeah,
Okay. Off the top of my head, no,
yeah,
but I think a few weeks.
yeah, a few weeks.
Um, so maybe I think we haven't quite talked about. So you have the daily highlight. You want like how do you kind of touched on it, but how I don't know. In Make Time, they give a lot of clear strategies.
Mm,
I'm
yeah.
kind of more interested in yours
Mm,
right now, at least. Like, what do you do to make time for that, or
yeah.
design your day, design your time, apply design thinking maybe to make that
Yeah.
happen?
So my productivity system is a work in progress. So I'll be the first one to say it's not complete yet. But my biggest insight, and if I ever write anything substantial about productivity, this will probably be it.
Hmm.
Is projects are dead. They're you know anyone who manages their
The
time
idea
right.
of a project, you mean?
There are no more projects,
Okay.
and at least for most people in most situations in their life. So what do I mean by that? So products are uh, they're a remnant of a past where and still a present, I guess, in some
Products or
cases.
projects?
Projects. Sorry.
Projects.
Uh, so projects are a vestige of a past where we could say very clearly what the outcome we wanted was, define
Right.
it in great detail, know that the world will not change that much from now until it's completed, and then kind of break it down into steps and do it, right? And
Okay.
there isn't a ton of ambiguity or a ton of uncertainty or a ton of change
And what kind of thing are
built
you
into it.
talking here? What kind of, maybe you can give an example of one of those old school projects?
Well, so building a house is quite like that, right? So,
Mm.
you have an architect, they make a plan, you hire a contractor, they know what materials
And you
you
know when
need.
it's done.
You know when well, theoretically, right? Though
Well,
everybody who works with
it's probably
contractors will
not
tell
going to
you,
be done when it's
yeah,
meant to be done, but at least when it is done, you know it's done.
it's done and it fits the plan, and it's very rare that the finished house is like so different from the floor plan, right?
Mm.
And so there are still projects like that, but that's a very old world. Like most of us no longer work in this static world. So when I have a new marketing initiative, it is entirely possible that halfway through a new, better technology will become available. Uh, that the social network that I was counting on changes their policies. That privacy laws are enacted. That by the way, all of these things happen to me, right? And uh, and so your ability to say ahead of time, hey, here's the end goal, here are all the
Mm.
steps, and know that it will even still be desired, let alone possible, in the future. I found it to be um, very rarely true. So what I ended up doing is getting rid of. So in my project management system, there are no projects. There are only what I call backlogs or queues.
Okay.
Um, and these backlogs are very generic um, aspects of my life in the business
Hmm.
that I know for sure will always be there. For instance, marketing
Mm.
or sales or design or just people, hiring and managing people, right? Finance, right? So these are my queues,
Okay.
and then inside there are all of these tasks that I can prioritize and reprioritize. And then once a week, I come in and I look at these queues and pull them into my weekly plan. Well, that's the theory, at least, because, like I said, this is still a work in progress, and so very, very often, right? These days, I still have way more to do each week than I can actually do, and so I can go into months long projects where I haven't looked at my backlogs because the urgent stuff is still front and
Mm,
center, and that's because I'm still doing more than the work of one person in this company, right? I still do a lot of sales, and I do a lot of the content and a lot of the marketing.
mm,
Um, but but once we start to pare that down, um, the 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 idea of making a weekly plan should be look at all of your areas of responsibility, look at what's top in each one, and make a bento box of what you're going to try to actually accomplish this week, without thinking about a project with a fixed outcome and fixed steps, because that I don't think works anymore in 95% of what we do.
mm. It sounds like um, then a lot of it is to do with dealing with uncertainty,
Mm.
which I guess can be often quite daunting as well. Or you have to accept that things might change. It's like adaptability. I don't know. That's what I'm
Mm.
hearing. Is that something you?
So there's uncertainty and there's ambiguity, which are related.
How
Uncertainty
are they
is
different? Yeah.
uncertainty is that you cannot know all the pertinent facts about the project, right? Including a competitor coming in and making it obsolete, a new tool making it obsolete in a sense that there's now a way better way to do what you were planning to do.
Mm,
Um, you lose someone who is going to do the work, and suddenly you don't have the skills. So this uncertainty, and it's just and that keeps growing, right? We're talking about a VUCA world, which is VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's our
it's
world.
comforting. Okay.
Our world is becoming more and more VUCA, um, and so
Where
uh,
does that come from?
I think it's like I think it's from the world of organizational psychology, organizational consulting, but I also think it's used very much in like policy, foreign affairs, military,
Okay.
um, and so the so this idea of a VUCA world, right? So uncertainty is the fact that you don't know every relevant factor.
Hmm.
Ambiguity is that you don't even know what the right thing to do is or what the desired thing to do is. So, not only do you not know if your project is going to succeed, you don't even know if what you're doing is the right thing to do, or
Mm,
if the outcome you're striving for is the right outcome. And very and added to that is the the feedback that you're getting is ambiguous. You don't even know after you've done it if it was a success. So I'll give you an example. These videos,
yeah.
so we launch them on all these social networks. Well, not every social network shows me the views that it gets, or I
Yeah.
have to dig quite deep into the view. So I don't necessarily know, are these videos like working for
Even
people?
after they're done. Yeah.
Even after they're done, and then potentially a couple weeks later, I can go and look at the analytics and try to figure it out. But and then you don't know if they liked it. So what does it mean? You know, what does it mean that 300 people watch the video if a watch is counted for watching over a minute,
Mm.
right? At what point it's like, and so how many people finish the whole video? I don't even have that stat, but probably zero, uh, right? And
Yeah.
so and what would constitute, like, what would even constitute a good result? Do we want
Mm.
it? Is it if they watch in a minute and thought,
Yeah. And is
"Wow,
it a
this
quantitative
Iran person
thing?
is
Is it?
really stupid," right? Is that a good thing?
Could be,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's really hard. So that's ambiguity. Um, and so when we are, remind me your question again, because I know
It
this
was
is
sort of, I
starting.
guess now what I'm wondering is how you deal with that, because that's what that sounds like. What we started by saying, kind of the end of the project. You don't think in projects. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Oh yeah, yeah,
dealing with changing
yeah,
factors and not knowing what the outcome is or
yeah,
should be.
yeah,
And I can imagine that, I don't know for you, but for a lot of people, for me, that would be slightly unsettling. Like,
yeah.
it's nice to have some
Certainty.
certainty,
Yeah,
and if you can package something into a project, even if it doesn't work at the end,
yep.
probably feels quite nice.
So um, I have a lot of friends who are academics and doctors and
Mm,
um, and and scientists. In some ways, they deal with a lot of uncertainty because you
mm,
don't know if you're going to be able to save that patient, and you don't know if the study is going to produce results. So in some ways, but in terms of career track, I was always very very jealous of how, like, a
mm,
doctor in the first year of medical school, they know what the steps are going to be for the
yeah,
next 7 years or more,
yeah,
um, and so that's pretty incredible. And then I think that the way everybody seems to be converging on how to deal with these things is process. And and I love this term from I think it's the way of the warrior, but some spiritual book, but they talk about being impeccable,
okay,
having an impeccable process. So that's that's the certainty of saying, okay, we live in a very messy world.
hmm,
Every morning we're going to meet for 20 minutes to discuss what we're going to do at the same time, right? um, and then every at the end of every week we're going to meet and discuss how did the week go, what can we learn from it, right? And adapt. And then every Monday morning we're going to meet and say and plan this week and saying what are we committed to trying to achieve this week. And so these are concepts taken from the world of Scrum, which is um, a methodology for managing software projects.
okay,
But in design, it's the same thing, right? So we we focus on the process of design. So we start with empathy. We say, okay, the first step of engaging with a VUCA world is let's listen to people and understand uh, what pains them, what doesn't work for them, what works for them. Create the empathy.
mm,
Then okay, let's dig in and try to define what the real problem is. Like so let's define the problem in this really good way, and let's do that together. And then let's look at solutions that are out there to get inspired, right? And then let's sketch out ideas, and then let's vote on them. And so all of these steps that we do in a design sprint, but it's part of design thinking methodology,
mm,
um, are a focus on process in a world of uncertainty and ambiguity, um, which is um, which might be the only way, because what uncertainty and ambiguity tells you is you don't know,
mm.
right? So accept that you don't know and focus on how do you learn and how do you get better.
So it's a framework for dealing with the uncertainty as opposed to trying to
Correct.
eliminate it. Is that
Correct. And then if you notice the people who are really uncomfortable with uncertainty then latch on to the process as if that is 100% certain,
mm,
and that's not
mm,
true either,
mm. That
right?
has to
So
be flexible and adaptable to.
right, you can say, well, this is a really good process, but what if someone comes up with a better one, right? Like,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
so like you have to be able to also have a process about your process. um, but um, but yeah, and I guess just getting comfortable with it emotionally
Mm,
is the most important thing for creativity. And it's just is saying it's okay that I don't know. It's okay that things that are going to happen that I don't anticipate.
Mm.
Um, if you ever sailed in a boat, right? If you ever had to, it's the same thing. You don't know where the waves are coming from. You don't know where the wind is going to come from. You don't know where the currents are going to go. So you have to be okay with constantly monitoring and adapting, and that's why
Mm.
and that's a skill. So I actually think skippers of boats would be quite good
They're
designers.
designers. Yeah.
Yeah, they could be quite good designers, at least from the aspect of like comfort with uncertainty.
Yeah, I think that's probably the extreme. Yeah, cool. And definitely dealing with changing elements. That's for sure.
Changing elements, yeah, complexity, trusting your instinct to like having to react in the
Mm.
moment, um, for sure. And then also like realizing that things could fall apart. Like
And
when
being pretty brave to go at it anyway.
when I did my skipper license here in Israel, we were four of us on the boat,
Mm.
um, preparing together for this test, and you could tell the difference. And this was my second. I totally failed the first one, so this is my second one that I passed. But by the time I did the second, I had a lot of training because I also trained for
Mm.
the first one,
Mm.
and so there were two of us who got the wind, and getting the wind is like always being attuned to the wind, knowing where it's coming from, knowing how you adjust the sail in the ship,
Mm.
and two of us who, for the longest time, didn't get it, and it was amazing because you literally could be in the most placid voyage when one of the people who got the wind was in charge, and then literally is like, okay, give you the helm to the other person, and everything starts spinning, and the sail like just like almost kicks someone off the boat, and it's all about a situational awareness and adaptation in real time, um, and not panicking and not being overwhelmed, right? And
So just to clarify, which of the two were you? On which side of this were you?
and the first test, I was one of the ones who didn't get it. The second one, I was one of the ones that
You
did get it.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And is that why you now think that designers and skippers are aligned? Because you can claim both.
My first the name of my agency was Little Boat because
Mm.
I thought that the product adventure was very similar to a little boat on a stormy ocean.
Nice.
Um,
Cool. I don't think we have much time left,
hmm.
but if you have a couple of minutes, maybe you want to introduce the podcast episode that's coming up this week. I believe
Sure.
it's Bioaccumulafe.
Bioaccumulafe, yes, for sure.
How was that? How was your chat? And what can people look out for this week,
So it
if
was
you can recall it?
it's a Bio is a remarkable person. Um, he kind of speaks in poetry.
Mm.
Um, his vocabulary is insane, um, and beautiful. And so the way he speaks is so beautiful, and the way he writes is so beautiful. It's a it, it's a little bit hard to understand sometimes, especially if you're not coming from kind of a pretty spiritual background. He's a deeply spiritual person. So when he talks about activism, and he actually talks about post activism,
Yeah.
he talks about it from a perspective of deep spirituality, of deep, the very fact that you're bringing your mindset and intention and trying to force it on top of a reality which is not yours, and that's colonialism. That's a form of spiritual colonialism, right? And thinking that you know enough to kind of come in and try to solve something uh, in a system made of other people, right? So, but the way he describes it is so beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the reactions. I did feel um, I did feel the need to kind of record an intro that unpacked it a little bit or prepared
Mm.
people.
Mm.
for it, because it's definitely different from the normal episodes that we do, where people are coming in with their elevator pitch, or they're coming in with like
Yeah.
already the slickest way to say something, and
Yeah.
and the way Bio speaks is like he's painting a picture in real time, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful picture, but you kind of have to prep yourself to be receptive. So hopefully, I think it's one of our most fascinating episodes, and Bio is very well known, um, both in spiritual circles and in academic circles, and in activism circles, as kind of this teacher that teaches you how to think differently about these topics.
Mm.
Um, so I hope our audience will appreciate it. It's a very, very interesting episode.
Cool. I think it's a great intro already.
Cool.
And I think we can leave it there for today, right? If you're happy.
Round. And did you just lose me for a minute?
Yeah,
Or
I
is
lost
it
you. I
okay?
lost you.
Yeah, I lost myself. Like suddenly, it's like I see myself.
That's pretty heavy.
Pretty
But you're
spiritual.
back now. I missed that
So
last sentence.
so I was just gonna say I could talk all day about John Zeratsky, and like what a
Yeah.
really fascinating person he is, and how he wrote two books that have changed my life. So I can't wait for his third book or whatever he does next. But he's also an investor, and he starts an investment fund that's doing great work. So I think the episode will be really interesting, because he's a person of such a phenomenal background, and that's still the latest episode. If you're hearing this on Wednesday, April
Yeah.
13th, then it's still the latest episode.
And there's lots in there for, I think, for everyone with different interests. Like
For
you
sure.
said.
For
Yeah.
sure. All right, awesome. Louis, thank you so much. I need to hop on the next
Next
interview,
one. Yeah.
and I'll see you next week on all of the social media platforms.
Once we get our metrics back.
Exactly.
Or not. Thanks, everyone.